everybody. Welcome to my relaunch of Damn's Given, my podcast. I'm Nick Richtsmeier, your host. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we jump in. A reminder that some things have changed and other things have not. All our episodes are available at damnsgiven.com and all across your various podcatchers. So Apple, Spotify, everybody else. And then also videos will be available on YouTube. I do encourage you to subscribe at Damn's Given. You'll be getting extra content from me, and we'll break down some of what I've been learning here. And just remember, we do read all your comments, for better or worse, on the episode, and we love your questions and follow-ups, so please use that feature, or you can email us at podcast@culturecraft.com. I'd love to hear from you. So this episode is a bit of a soft reboot, and if you'll indulge me a little bit, I'd like to talk some about why. Almost 10 years ago, after 15 years in finance and executive leadership, suit wearing and tie wearing every day, I made a choice, like many others, a lot of you who are listening have made, and that I wanted to go deeper, ask better questions of my own work, explore, try things. And I had, I think, some deeper questions about the marketplace we were building together that I didn't fully understand until years later. This was before COVID, before lockdowns, before AI. At least AI as we now know it, and so much of the change that now we kind of consider as normal. So back then, you might have seen me on a stage at a Salesforce event or at a financial services conference talking about things that seem crazy now, the critical merger of tech and human and how we were all going to be more efficient and do more, and soft selling, kind of quite honestly, what this economic model that has now descended upon us that has been quite disassembling of what we know and trust. And to that point, one of the things that has been the most disassembled is, of course, trust. And so since then, I've been researching, building, working with founders and often creatives and trying to manage the gaps between them through my firm, Culturecraft. Shout out to our clients. And I've been exploring what I've come to call the trust, some of you call the trust broken economy, and its protections in the algorithmic society. And here's what I know. The data is really incontrovertible on this, that we've seen a 40-year decline in systemic trust in all institutions, nearly all institutions. For some reason, the military has been rising in that same period. But religion, business, leadership, government, schools, healthcare, you name it, we dramatically trust it less than we did. And a lot of that acceleration increased in the early 2000s with the advance of what I thought and everybody thought was going to be this massive global positive good, which was the internet. More information, more access, you can get anything, you can find out anything, transparency, visibility, connection, all of these really heavily coded buzzwords were going to solve, so much for us. I don't have to convince you, right, that hasn't really been how it's gone, that it has accelerated distrust. It has in some ways broken the exact trust that it promised, right? Firms that said, oh, we'll never sell your data, sell your data. Firms that said, oh, we're just here to help connect you with your friends and family, use that connectivity to transform economies and elections and governments in not necessarily the most savory ways. I talk every day with people who are in SEO and other marketing functions who feel like their entire careers have been betrayed by Google and other firms that they trusted to get them to be a partner in where they were going. And here we are, right? And we've been convinced that the solution to all of this is just to keep leaning into it, to keep trusting where trust has been broken. It's all going to be fine. And that if we just get efficiency figured out, if we just keep leaning into efficiency, it's all going to work itself out. But I think we know that's not true. I mean, here's what I know. The overwhelming majority of ventures simply just don't depend on tech-powered efficiency. They use technology. Technology plays a role. Obviously, software plays a role. Where I'm sitting here staring at a computer, it plays a role in my business. But the fundamentals of my business is human. It's people, complicated human beings who have to keep showing up and building something that matters in the face of everything else that they're facing. Again, as I mentioned, that trust is in as bad a state as it's ever been in the modern times. And I think if the mass media and big tech have anything to say about it, it's going to keep getting worse. I also know that hope is an action, and that leaders and founders and ventures that believe in a mercantile, two people facing each other, making a transaction, humanist, economy, one where we make ethical trades, not extractions, one where not every action is a zero-sum game, one where the thriving of customers and employees and communities and, yeah, shareholders and capital can work together for shared outcomes. That's the business of a commercial counterculture, a pushing back on the way things are going to make things better. And, so to propel this forward, leaders have to give a damn. You have to give a damn about trade-offs, about succumbing to digital extraction. You have to give a damn about the communities that you're in and that depend on you, and that you're building for humans and not robots, which is incredibly difficult to do. Many of you will remember that previously this podcast was under the banner of Working Broken, and Brad and I explored how the fundamental assumptions about modern work were failing us. And if you listen to our last episode of 2025, you know that we got just tired talking about all that. We know things are broken. You know things are broken. Some of them irretrievably so. Some of them we're never going back. And we want to talk about how to make it better. I want to talk about how to make it better. What dams are worth giving, because we can't care about everything. And so what I'm going to do here on the podcast each week is we're going to share with you a leader giving a damn about something that brings ventures and leaders back to trust, back to what matters, back to what works, away from all these systems that have and will continue to sell your business out from under you, sell your venture out from under you. And it only makes sense to start that discussion with this incredible topic, getting to this week, that has broken through the New York Times, through Substack, through literally millions of people's probably now broken New Year's resolutions, digital minimalism. My guest today is Jose Briones, a digital minimalism advocate, a strategist, and a really, really critical voice. When I started reading Jose, I saw something I didn't know was missing until I saw it. Saw something in him that was missing from the discourse. I'll just call it principled pragmatism. He wasn't all like, throw away your cell phone, cancel Instagram, touch grass, all this mantraism that's taken over discourse. He wrote from and continues to work from real world experience to stop masquerading as the attention economy and really deal with the fundamental addictions that underlie these systems and how they've impacted the way we think. Jose's going to teach us that we have to literally rechange the way we think again. And that more is needed than just switching up the tech or getting a different phone or whatever. We got to be willing for a deeper reset. And this is where I really got intrigued. And I think you're going to love our conversation. All right. Well, Jose is here. I'm so excited to be talking with you. Forgive my weird voice thing. I've been fighting off the remnants of a cold for like a week, and the voice just doesn't seem to want to come back. But I can make it through the podcast. I feel confident. And really, people are here to talk to you. Those of you who don't know Jose, we're hitting a topic that is like, I kind of feel like it's like the topic of the year so far. Like the New York Times did a thing, and everybody's talking about going analog and buying records and all this thing. But I wanted to have a conversation with someone who I clearly saw had some expertise on this. And we'll talk a lot about your book. He has a book out called Low Tech Life, and Jose will talk about how you can get a handle on that, which I really enjoyed. One of the things I loved about the book is you explore a little bit sort of like, hey, everybody says you should do X, and that's kind of complicated, and here's what makes it complicated, right? And so we'll get into a little bit of that today. But before we do anything, Jose, at a base level, what's digital minimalism and why should we care about it?
I think digital minimalism is a practice that allows us to recover balance between our online overloaded world. Essentially, over the last few years, what we have had is just the online continues to creep into every aspect of life. And what we want is to recover a little bit of that balance in between, have a little bit more just more time for the activities that we want to do and less time in front of the screen.
Have you seen, I mean, you've been thinking about this for a while. Your content on this goes back many years, and your own personal experiments go back many years. I think there's a shift on this, but I'm curious what you think. You were watching this closer than I do. Is attention on this topic shifting?
Yes, it is. And actually, I am writing a newsletter as of today that is essentially saying social media companies are scared because governments, parents, And people, just in general, are coming after them and quitting their platforms en masse. Like this is coming, and people are trying to regain their focus. I started with my experiments before the pandemic.
Mm.
So it was even before everything got appified, everything was a QR code, everything required a two-factor authentication. And after the pandemic, a lot of people decided that they're digitally fatigued. They like online. I like online. I think it's powerful. It gives us a lot of discretion. But now it's essentially something that is thrusted at you with the advent of AI even more. And people are tired of that. People want to regain that agency, and as a result, yes, I see a major shift. We see it all throughout the world. Governments, schools, they're restricting the usage of online. They're not saying never use online, but they're saying we need to get back to what made us human. And what makes us human is connection.
Yeah, I want to come back to by the time this is published, we're past the recording, your newsletter will be out, so we won't spoil the newsletter on at time of publication. So maybe at the end we can talk a little bit about social media platforms being scared because I'm really into that. That sounds awesome. But what started it for you when you go back to pre-pandemic? If we, as much as we feel like we're passing through some sort of portal to go pre-pandemic, other than just going through time, it's a little bit hard to imagine that era. But I do remember that we were much less cynical about these kinds of things at that time. Maybe there was some initial, concerns. What started turning the tide for you?
So I think for me, it's when I got my first job. So I got out of university and I went to my first job. And when you're in university, you're in a very artificial environment where all of your friends, all of your responsibilities, everything is right there. And you walk to your work, you walk to see your friends, you walk to entertainment. And then I moved to a rural area of the country
Mm.
where I didn't have my friends around. I didn't have entertainment options around. I didn't have all of these things readily available to me. So what I did was what many Americans do, which is essentially they just go to their devices for entertainment. So I
Mm.
started to watch more things. I started to engage online. And hey, my friends were online. Therefore, I wanted to interact with them as well. So my screen time skyrocketed from about 3 to 4 hours, which is just general screen time for an average person, to 12 hours. And I decided that that was not good for me. That
Yeah.
was just not something that I wanted in my life. And I think the shift actually happened way before the pandemic in 2014
Mm.
when companies decided to start thinking in terms of algorithmic content and they designed larger screens. So now your phone isn't pocketable anymore, but it's an entertainment device where you are going to spend most of your time.
Let's pause there for a second because I think this is really, really important. And I think a lot of people don't really fully understand it. Is this issue of the algorithmic shift, right? And I'll take my pass at it. You'll probably do a better job of it. But the shift here is how content is served to you. And for a variety of reasons, much of them having to do with advertising and also getting people to be stickier on the apps themselves. The big apps made decisions about what to serve you and when, and massive algorithmic shifts in terms of putting things in front of you that were more likely to keep you on the app. So, all this started, right, with just a timeline based scroll of what the people you knew were saying. And slowly over time, that started to shift. And to your point, in 2014, it starts to accelerate dramatically, right?
Mhm.
And that does what, right? So, Jose, take us from there, kind of what the impact of that is.
So, what happens there is that instead of you being the customer, now you became the product. So, what happened during this time period, as Shoshana Zuboff says in her book, Surveillance Capitalism,
Yeah.
is that we became the product, the raw means. So, the extracted material.
Yes.
So, before they served you content that you liked, they served you ideas or posts from your friends so that you could interact and create an engagement or an event. But then it shifted to whatever their advertisers wanted, to
Yeah.
whatever those companies wanted. So instead of serving you, now they started to extract from you in order to make you spend more time on the platform, spend more money on products. So what happened is that now you start engaging with the content that they're serving you, and then they start extracting data from you. They start saying, Nick likes, posts about the NFL at 3 p.m. Therefore, this means that people in the same space as Nick, so, male, maybe they live in a certain geographic area, they want that content at the same time. We're going to give this information to the advertisers so they can create an even more compelling product that we can serve back to Nick so that he can sign up for NFL Plus at 3 p.m. because he is susceptible at that time.
Yeah.
That's when he takes his break. So what happened is that these companies decided that you were not their customer anymore, but instead you were both the means to their customers, the advertisers, the companies, and you were also their cash flow by spending on these affiliate commissions that they're making. So we became a product, we became the raw means of extraction without knowing it. And then we didn't fight back because it was entertaining, because now I have a wider understanding of the world. And now I'm being served all of these different experiences, let it be people from different countries or how is life in this place or that place. And yes, it is entertaining, but we did not notice the shift. And then they amped it up. They put it all together with even more psychological
Yeah.
processes to continue keeping you hooked. This is the gambling mechanism. So you refresh to get new content. This is the phantom notifications. A lot of people sometimes say, like, I thought I had a notification from Facebook. I saw the icon, but when you open it up, it was nothing. That's actually something that they're doing. And now we are finding internal documents. And this is why they're also scared, because now we have the data, we had the receipts that they were intentionally exploiting us for their benefit.
Absolutely. This episode of Damns Given is brought to you by The Guild from Trust Made Growth. Trust Made Growth is the foundation for remaking our ventures and our communities into human-centered form, recovering the flow of resources and growth away from monopolies and into the hands of the majority. The Guild is a free community, what we call a counterculture of commerce, where we support, encourage, and resource free-thinking leaders to claim their agency, their intellectual capacity, and their ability to make opportunity. If you have a deep sense that the status quo of the economy that's been built needs a reset, and want to lean into doing the work to hone your ability to contribute with peers and mentors, then the Guild from Trust Made Growth is for you. Discover it now at trustmadegrowth.com. What you're describing is the move from stage 1 to stage 2 of what Cory Doctorow calls enshittification.
Yes.
Right. So that these major platforms on the internet are all in various stages of enshittification. Phase 1 is they give you a bunch of cool free stuff and you fall in love with it. And you're like, my gosh, this is so great. I could do this all the time. Right. And then they monetize that stuff for selling to advertisers, which of course is what you're talking about. And then we don't need to get into this today. We don't just need to be a Cory Doctorow thesis. And then they turn on the advertisers. And then now the advertisers are hooked and they black box that. And now there's data that says that 30 to 40% of advertisements that businesses are paying for don't actually even produce ads. And there's no way to prove or not prove that, right? So we've got a massive house of cards that's very driven by social media and the addictive behaviors around that. But your work is really slightly broader than that, right? It's not just turn off your social media. It's really, a more lo-fi existence, right? What you call in the book, a low-tech life. So why should we think about it just beyond social media, right? There's a lot of talk about social media. Why think about it beyond that?
So I think there are two reasons why we need to talk about it in this way. And the first one is that simply reducing is never going to be enough. Cutting out, it's like there are so many parallels in the world of food. You can cut out sugar, for example, or you can cut out carbohydrates, right? But that's not enough. You need to re-engineer your lifestyle. That's not going to make you healthy all of a sudden, right? Or in the finance world, this is also common. you can start cutting your lattes, you can start cutting, your purchases or whatever. That's not going to make you wealthy.
Right.
What you need is a mindset shift. And this is what happened to me. I used the Light Phone 3 at this point. At the time I used the Light Phone 2, and I thought that it was a device problem. So I thought that it was just like reduce your social media engagement, reduce your interaction with online, and then all of a sudden your life is going to change. And look, I had a very basic phone, a phone that only has very minimal things, right? But that wasn't enough because what I had was a lifestyle issue. So now, during my first year, what I did was I spent time on my laptop more.
Yeah.
Well, I just shifted the consumption from this idea of the online world on my pocket, on my phone, to my computer. So the first thing is reduction is not enough. You need to think in mindset terms, you need to think in lifestyle terms. And the second thing, I think it's more human than that, which is we are losing skills. We
Mm.
are losing abilities as human beings to navigate the world, to just think and be bored. We are losing the ability to have reflection and human connection that's actually palpable.
Yeah.
So these are the two reasons that I have identified that this goes deeper. It's because we are losing the way to process information because now we're feeding it to to LLMs, to artificial intelligence, and we're saying, hey, here is the paragraph that I need for my test tomorrow. Summarize it and give me the top 3 points that may be in the test. Instead of you actually digesting that information and allowing it to transform your brain. So it is a warning, but it is also a point of inflection that we're in right now. And this is why offline is needed. A low tech life is needed because it allows us to recover skills and abilities, but it also allows us to reconnect with one another. One of my favorite examples is when I go to restaurants that only have QR codes. And
I hate that. I hate that so much. I don't know why. It drives me crazy.
well, number one, you hate it because it's another thing that you have to do with your phone, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, why? This is not necessary. But what I do is I say, hey, I have a phone that doesn't read QR codes. What can you do for me? And then the person has to interact with me. And then they say, well, we don't really have a menu. Sometimes they don't. So then I ask them, okay, what's your favorite dish? What's your favorite food here? So we have an actual conversation. And then because I don't have a phone that is distracting me all of the time while I'm eating, because that's what people do nowadays, they eat and they look at their phone. Then when the server comes and says, hey, is everything okay? Like, I'm like, yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the recommendation. Or I say like, oh, hey, like, is this what people use? So I have a conversation. I have something that I'm actually there with
Mm.
them. And that allows me to re-engage. Same thing when I go on public transport, whenever I go on a trip, whenever I am around other humans, maybe even at the park. I'm like, I'm not looking at my phone. I'm looking at life and then I'm engaging with it. So I think that that's why it goes deeper than just reduce your engagement in social media. Reducing is important, but what are you filling your life with? What are
Mm.
you now doing that is satisfying and enjoyable and that is making your life a richer existence on this place?
Yeah, it was one of my favorite parts of your book, and it happens fairly early on in the book, but it right about that time where you were realizing it's not a device thing. And you talk about how um essentially I don't know if you use these words, but basically that your brain was like not prepared to be disconnected. And so
Yes.
that's why you went to the laptop is you're like, I got we're so accustomed to immediate access to this information or anything, and I really started reflecting on that after I read it of like, that is such a huge piece of it that really it is about, can I sit with not knowing that?
Mhm.
Right? I'm so used to it. Well, I'll just look it up on maps or I'll just grab Wikipedia or I'll just, and it's, and I don't really need that information, right? I don't need to know who won the Golden Globe in 2011, right? That's not like important or significant. And in fact, it pulls me out of the conversation I'm in, right? We're having a chattering about the Golden Globes. I mean, oh gosh, who did win the Golden Globe for Best Actor in 2011? Now I'm over here on my phone looking it up, right? And that pulling out of life so that I can get immediate access to what I need to get to, it feels like that's as much of the thing as the social media algorithm thing, right? That what we have to retrain ourselves to, it's okay to not know that immediately.
So I think that the easiest way for you to experience this is if you go on a long distance Amtrak trip here in the United States, because there is a different culture in that train. We take sometimes from time to time, my job takes me to the other side of the state, and sometimes I take the Amtrak that way. It is a little bit more time, but I love the experience because you can see people engaging with the nature of Colorado. This is where I live, and it goes through the mountains, and there's a viewing cart. But the reason why people engage in this way is because there is no signal for 75% of the time that you're on the train. So, and this happens in other routes as well in North America. And what happens is essentially people are forced to interact with each other. And you can see people, they bring their lunch, they have conversation, they start asking questions. People are reading books, they're playing card games or board games that they bring on the train. And it is quite a kind of like a trip to the past,
Interesting.
to the 2000s, even not the distant past, but it allows you to see that we still have these skills. It's just that right now we are being encouraged to not use them and to rely on the internet instead. So, for example, for the Golden Globes, this is something that happens when you pull out your phone to look for information. You will not remember that information later on.
Of
But
course.
if you ask the question, you write a note, and then you look it up later, then your brain has more time to create that connection and you
Mm.
will remember who did it. How the information gets to you or how fast it gets to you matters as well. So when you have time to reflect, when you have time to remember, when it actually occupies your thoughts, because what we're doing right now is we grab our phones and we're like, hey, you know what? I need this information right now. Okay, I look at, okay, what's next? So we don't have time to actually allow our thoughts to
Mm.
marinate. So these are skills that we have developed over the long periods of time of human history that now we're losing to our devices and especially to AI.
Okay, we're going to pivot to AI here in just a second, which I'm sure people are wanting to hear us talk about. But um, I have never had anybody explain what you explained to me in the way that you said it, and I think it's so important, right? You hear this all the time. Maybe it's because all my friends are middle aged and because I'm middle aged, but like, oh gosh, my memory's going. I can't remember anything. Gosh, I just have amnesia. I'm getting old. Blah 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 blah. The idea that a portion of that sort of aphasia that we can't hold on to things, to people's names or stuff that we looked up or whatever, is a function of how little time we're allowing stuff to stick in our brains because of clicking to the next thing, right? The sort of tab-based multitasking that we live by. That's fascinating. That's that's fascinating.
And there are other things that are also being lost in that, memory engagement. But one of the things that happens is that we are losing the ability to endure friction. So
Yeah.
because everything is available now, we get frustrated. We get anxious when something is not readily available to us. I saw it happen to somebody. I went to a Nuggets game last year, and I love going to the Nuggets games. And right now they only have QR codes. So what I do is I bring my ID, I print my confirmation that I bought the ticket, and then I go to the tickets resolutions counter. This is something I've been doing since I got a dumb phone for a long time now. But I saw this person and they were like, it's not working. Like, they had their QR code, they had their
Yeah.
offer, and they were kind of like yelling at the attendant. And I just told him, like, hey, man, like, there is a place to fix. They're going to let you in. Like, you bought
Yeah.
the ticket, like, it's okay. You need to go
Yeah.
talk to a human because technology is not perfect 100% of the time. So, yes, your QR code is not working here. This is where you need to go. And then the person was like, okay, so then they went to talk to them. They gave them a paper ticket like they give me all the time that I go. And then they went and they enjoyed the game. But that frustration is something that we're losing as well. We're losing the ability to be frustrated, to think creatively for solutions,
Mhm.
because he's thinking, I'm depending on this device.
Yeah.
Show me the QR code. And if this device doesn't do it, then nothing can do it.
Yes.
Technology companies have promised us that use our technology and you'll never have a problem again. And
Yeah.
then you have a problem, and then you're like, well, what can solve this amazing issue? Well, humans usually can, because they're the ones that design it.
I mean, that again, you think about if we think in an empathic way, as you've done, about the person who's frustrated about his ticket not working, and you think about how much he's been socialized to depend so heavily on this incredibly fragile relationship, right? The fragility of that machine, because if it breaks, you're under the impression that you're kind of screwed, right? That there's no way forward. And that constant experience of fragility. Oh, the map's not loading. I'm going to get lost. And it starts to feel existential, right? My way of being in the world is dependent on this thing, right? I wish I could show my nice healthy device. This is my unhealthy device.
Well, let me tell you, that's not unhealthy unless you choose for
Well,
it to
I
be
promise you
unhealthy.
it's unhealthy. Um, and we're working on it. We're working on it. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation, because I'm not an expert in it. I want this, and I've made experiments with it, but I wanted to have this conversation. I the what you're speaking to me is just another layer of what is a broad modern problem is emotional dysregulation.
Yeah.
We just can't we just can't hold tension in our bodies and going, oh, this is hard. I'm going to have to figure it out. And we're seeing consequences of that emotional dysregulation everywhere, right? Everywhere.
On that point of emotional dysregulation, we are now offloading that emotional dysregulation to machines
I know.
instead of
Yeah.
humans, which is very, very concerning for especially a new generation. I mean, there have been already cases of people who have unfortunately lost their lives as a result of this offloading of emotions to a machine, and the machine not
Yeah.
properly telling them, hey, you need to go talk to a human, which is even more concerning. But I think that this is something that will allow us to become, whenever you disconnect, whenever you reset, I actually now tell people, you don't have to live the life that I live. Like, you don't, I'm not the ideal.
Yeah.
You had to find something that works for your work, for your family, something that allows you to restore that balance. But the one thing you need is a periodic reset. Let it
Mm.
be a 1 day a week. Let it be a weekend a month. Let it be a vacation offline. You do need a periodic reset that
Yeah.
allows your brain to re engage as a human with no outside help. And it's going to be very hard, but it's going to be very worth it, because you're going to learn how to interact with the world again, even if it's for a few hours, even if it's just for a weekend, and allow you to not think, okay, I'm getting lost, or I'm not actually developing the ideas and skills that I need to.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the show notes. I don't know if you read it. Speaking of the New York Times, this was a piece, I think before Christmas, but it again a little bougie, but again you can dial it down for a normal human's existence. She's a Yale professor. She teaches writing, and she's moved her class to a 4-week intensive at a like an offsite location. So they go to like a cabin or something, and it's unplugged, right? So no devices. And there's like one computer that's supervised by the TA, and you're allowed, it's like a computer lab. Like you're allowed so many hours a day. You can go do like some research if you need it. And the article is so incredible because she talks about these students and how, again, initially it's like they're lost,
Mhm.
right? But then slowly, all of a sudden, they come back to themselves over a period of the first couple weeks. And then by the fourth week, they're having conversations of, well, how do I reorganize my life? Because I'm having the best ideas I've had that I can remember
Mhm.
because their brains lit back up again. I mean, it's incredibly fascinating.
I think that there are many examples nowadays of people trying to unplug and go offline. And there are many companies that are providing those services as well. This is one of my caveats. A lot
Yeah.
of these things may seem like you need money to do, but you don't.
Yeah.
You don't need to pay somebody to do these things. What you
Yeah.
need is intention. So, for example, this is my number one tip for everybody listening. This is whenever somebody asks me, like, what can I do to start regaining control? Delay your first interaction with technology as late as possible in your day. So
Mm,
if you start your work at 9, let it be, delay until you wake up at 6, you go on a walk, you prepare your breakfast without any interaction with technology. You allow your brain to sit, to actually marinate on the thoughts from the day before. You actually start processing things. What I do personally is I wake up, I drink some water. I have a dog, so he needs to go out. We go out for a 1 hour walk. Sometimes I take some music because I want to do that. But
yeah.
sometimes I just go and I don't take anything because I want my brain to not have that interaction. So you get to decide that, but the component is don't interact with a phone. For my music, I have a little MP3 player. It doesn't have a screen, it just plays music, that's it.
Yeah.
And that's my number one recommendation. Delay your interaction with technology and then have a cutoff time. So you delay and you cut it off at some point in time in your evening and you start reintroducing things, creative things like knitting, or let it be making a tea, just sitting down, having a conversation with your significant other, or calling somebody, right? Or maybe it is reading a book, but you need to have a start time and a cutoff time.
Yeah, I mean, that one, I love that. I think inevitably listening are going to go, well, what's my one thing? Right. So there you go. There's the soundbite. There's your one thing. I have gotten this pushback before when I'm talking about this in public spaces. And I'm sure you have too, where it's like, well, convenient for you, you have resources, you can do this, you know, and the example that's often given is like, well, if you're an Uber driver, you can't throw away your phone or whatever. And what I like about what you said, and there are other examples of this in your book, is the bulk of this is free,
Yes.
right? You don't need to go buy a new phone so that you can like, you know, you don't even have to go buy a brick, right? I mean, like a brick can be helpful, but that's not the master solution. So I think one of the things I love about the perspective you're bringing is this is internal work.
Yes.
This is internal work that has external consequences.
100%.
And the way you start it is by doing internal work that you don't have to pay any money for, right? You just go and you start to make a behavior change.
There is also another point that there are many people out in the world who are having meetings for things that may be interesting to you, that don't cost a dime. You may need to find them. Maybe you need to use the web to find, hey, where is the meetup? Where is the
Yep.
activity happening? But usually it's free. I recently found a financial group here of people that like to talk about financial independence. That's one of the topics I'm interested about. I think it's quite important to have a hold on your finances. But I just found out about it. I went to a meeting, and now every other Thursday, 2.5 hours of my day, I'm going to this place. They have a co working setup, and I just interact with other humans. I do a little bit of
Yeah.
work, but then I have conversations. And all it took was one time looking it up and saying, like, okay, what offline activities are available in my area that don't cost any money? And then I loved it. I'm going to continue doing it.
That's great. That's great. Let's I can't believe how fast the time is disappearing. We do a lot of episodes about AI from a lot of different perspectives. I don't want to get lost in the AI of it all, but I think we'd be remiss to not address just the mass acceleration of mental outsourcing that AI has produced. I won't even prompt you. Just give me your AI, you know, spiel. But what do we need to know?
What's the prompt that we need to give to AI? I don't know. I think that AI is always going to be a reinforcer or an accelerator of your skills. AI cannot make you a good writer. AI cannot make you a good coder. AI cannot make you a good designer. Those are skills that you had to develop over time. What
No.
AI can do is facilitate that. And I think AI has use cases. I personally think those use cases are usually overblown and they're told, like, oh, it's going to solve all of these issues that we have. But I think that, for example, if you're a researcher and you need some quick information and you don't have time to peruse the web, you can just ask a question and say, like, hey, what are articles that are referring to this? And then you can verify.
Yeah.
But AI is not going to make you a better researcher. I have issues with AI is when it starts replacing human components that we have had over a long time. When AI is passed as art or even as marketing, I recently saw a billboard on my city here in Denver that was clearly made by AI, and it's terrible. It really is. Like, it literally just grabs the cliches of motorcyclists and says, buy this motorcycle.
Yeah.
And I was just surprised to see a company, a big company, use this AI, knowing that it looks like AI, but also that people are going to say, that's a cliche. That doesn't really connect with me. If I want to become part of the motorcycle culture, in this specific case, I don't want that. Like, that's the stereotypical version. I want something that is crafted. I want something that is mine. And I think that's where AI comes into the play. It's reducing our skills, it's reducing our abilities because we're not engaging with the hard tasks. Um, and it could be useful in certain occasions. And I think we're also going to have to do the same thing that we did with regular technologies. We're going to have to find that balance. When is
Yeah.
it appropriate to use it? Who can use it? And the problem is that now it's about to get to stage two, and it's going to get worse. Like we talked about social media, they started to introduce advertisements, they started to mine
Yes.
your data. It's going the same way. They're already starting to introduce advertisements into certain platforms, and that's just going to ruin the experience that they have had so far.
Yeah. I mean, I think to some degree, to your point, like there's so much of the conversation that has been around its capabilities or lack thereof. Is AI good? Is AI this? And those are conversations that probably should be had and need to be had. But I think what's quite horrifying to some degree as it relates to this conversation is you sort of take everything that we didn't understand and certainly had neurological effects of the social media era. Like, I don't think we knew that we were, like dewiring ourselves for human connection. I don't think initially we knew
Mhm.
that a quick access to Wikipedia was keeping me from was going to affect my, like, I don't think these things were well known. And in some ways, AI seems like that on steroids, right? We're taking these things that now it's like, this is probably going to have second and third level consequences, right? Like, you talked earlier about obviously self-harm, and it's an absolutely horrific topic of when you replace the friction and the complexity and the strangeness of a human conversation, where we're like, oh, we don't quite jive right, or I gotta readjust, or I gotta say it differently, or maybe you're a little weird, or like all of that humanness is so what we're built for,
Yes.
right? The best of us is what we're built for. And if we just offload that into this automation, into these chatbots, high functioning chatbots, right? The consequences of that just feel really kind of terrifying to me a little bit in terms of what it's going to do to our brains and our ability to exist in a non-digital reality.
I think that that is a byproduct of our lack of skepticism towards technology companies. And the reason why is because we saw technology explode in the 20th century and it improved our lives so much that
Yeah.
when new technology companies came and they said it's going to improve your life so much, we said, yeah, that tracks. That tracks because in the past that was true, but it's not true anymore because their idea is not to, again, we went from the shift of serving you, of making your life better, to extracting from you.
Yeah.
And I think the best community that has a framework, I don't think we need to go this extreme with technology, but at least their framework that they have is the Mennonites and the Amish community.
Yeah.
What they do is they are not early adopters. They
Yeah.
say, okay, is this technology going to bring us closer or is it going to divide us? So they apply that layer of skepticism at the beginning. And if a technology is going to make their lives better and is going to bring them together, then they adopt it. And if they don't, then they reject it. And I think we need to apply that same level of skepticism to new technologies, maybe not to that extreme, to the extreme that
Yeah.
they apply it, but at least have a little bit more skepticism nowadays because big tech is not coming to save you, not
No.
anymore. If
No.
anything, they're coming, and as you see in the world right now with age verification, with cameras all over. I mean, you have seen the flock fiasco essentially at this point.
Yep.
They are here to work to constrain your freedoms instead of expand them. And it is deeply concerning that many people are not seeing it that way.
I mean, I think, right, this is all connected. When if you think about high high technology users, I don't mean people who are like coders, but people who just use a lot of technology. It's really hard to get to that skepticism, right? Because I can very quickly convince myself that, oh, well, I am more connected to people because of Facebook. Like, oh, I mean, so it did help me. It did make my life better. And because I've lost that sort of rough edge of what connection actually feels like. Or, and I've said this on LinkedIn of like, oh, well, LinkedIn is really helping me be more connected professionally. The 300 jobs that you applied for that never responded, like these high friction, low value experiences. But if you're in that ecosystem and your brain has acclimated to it, an AI that says, oh, you don't have to listen to podcasts anymore. I'll just send you podcast summaries.
Mhm.
Well, gosh, that, I don't know, maybe that does make my life better. Right. And so it seems like for us to be effective at having the right level of skepticism about AI, we have to go back to your core principles of like a much earlier skepticism of this whole thing of how much of my human existence am I willing to outsource and lose in the process. And it seems to me that to understand that initially, I have to first realize how much I've already lost. Right.
I think the easiest way for a lot of people to do this is an exercise that I called How Much Amazon Has Siphoned Out of Your Pocket. It's just to show that by having the Amazon app on your phone, you buy more things than you actually need. And what I invite people to do is go to your Amazon app, go through your order history for last year, tally up everything that you spent, and identify items that you did not use, you ended up returning, or for some reason they broke because they were poor quality, or at the end of the day, it was not as revolutionary as you thought, and then add up that amount of money. And then you're going to come to, usually most people come to about 500 to $1,000. It's not a massive amount of money, but it's enough to make you think, what could I have done with those 500 to $1,000? Like, how are these companies now? This is just Amazon because it's monetary, but how much time is
Yeah.
Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn taking away from my craft? And how much is that valuable that I could have done something that would have progressed my career, that could have made me connect better with my significant others, that would allow me to volunteer in my community. And these things are not hard. We know how to do them. The question is, are we willing to let go of the promises of big tech to allow and see the truth that they're exploiting us and not serving us?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a nice transition to come back to where you started. You're releasing a newsletter today. When we drop this episode, already be out in the world, so we'll put the link in the show notes. Tell us a little bit about, give us a preview of why should social media be afraid?
So social media companies are afraid right now because we now have the receipts that they knowingly have been exploiting our lives for the past 10 years. Governments, attorney generals all across the United States, companies are blocking access to certain tools. And most importantly, we are restoring some of the humanity for new generations. So what happens is that, Australia, the UK, they're putting blockers in schools right now to make sure that there is no access to social media. And it's not going to work perfectly. Let's just
No,
be clear. Like,
totally.
kids are going to find ways around it, but it's going to start restoring that conversation. And recently, there are lawsuits currently happening that TikTok and Snapchat just settled. Like, they settled because they know that they were going to lose. So they settled for an amount. But then you have YouTube and you have also, I believe it's Meta that is
Yep, that is in there.
going into the lawsuits, going into this. And they are scared because they realize that governments, individuals, companies, and small businesses, everybody is finding their playbook. It's now becoming open and publicized. So one of the issues that we had in the past is that we knew all of this information, but news outlets were not reporting on it. So now news outlets are reporting on it because they can see the shift. They can see the tide change that nowadays people are saying, like, yes, enough is enough. So because people are saying it, now they have the impetus to report on it, to say, hey, this is actually happening. And that is empowering more legal measures to restrict this access or to curtail it to a degree that allows us to recover some of our identities as humans once again. The other reason why social media companies are afraid is because people are taking steps for personal agency.
Yep.
And it's quite interesting that you go into any conversation, and usually it turns around to, like, at some point in time, it turns around to, why am I using my phone so much? Or, man, do you not think, like, this deep feel for nostalgia from the past, from designs from the past, from physical QWERTY keyboards or flip phones or whatever it is, it's returning. And social media's companies are starting to notice.
Yeah.
They're trying to actually get ahead of that by including their product in these low tech devices, even. But because these low tech devices are not really made for consumption, they're not finding the same results.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I'm working with, kind of like a company that they have a brick phone, like this one, like this one right here. It has the keys and it has the screen, and it's a very small screen compared to a smartphone. So what happens is this phone that I'm talking about still has TikTok, still has YouTube, but because the experience is so bad,
Yeah.
people are not using it. They're using the tools that are actually useful, and they're leaving the crap to one side. So, yeah, those are some of the reasons, and I'm excited to continue
Yeah.
seeing people returning to the offline spaces. One of the companies that is doing it in Europe is called the Offline Club. They have gatherings all throughout Europe and allowing people to reconnect with each other in an offline space. And there will be more coming to the United States and to other parts of the world as well.
That's great. It made me think another, you were talking about like sort of the same stuff just isn't as enticing in a different format. One of the things that I found very effective for me, my son, who's a teenager, absolutely loves this. He has it this way all the time. Is you've probably talked about this, is he turned his phone black and white.
Mhm.
You take the color out of it, and all of that addictive quality of those apps goes way down. I mean, it's dramatic.
Yes.
So again, another free thing that if you want to try, just turn your phone black and white, see how that goes. Well, and to your point of skepticism, right? There's always corporate takedown books every year. These things happen all the time. But last year, to have Careless People and Empire of AI, and later in the year, Ancientification, be probably three of the biggest sort of business nonfiction books of the year. That's significant. All right, well, we're going to do two things here to wrap up. We'll have Jose tell us a little bit about how you can find him and subscribe to his newsletter and all those things. It's incredibly valuable stuff. And then lastly, we'll ask our closing question for every episode. So, Jose, how can people find you?
So the easiest way to find me is on the website, josebriones.org. That's the website that I put pretty much everything. If you are looking for a dumb phone in particular, I also have the dumb phone finder at dumbphones.org. And the newsletter is called Moving Offline. It is hosted on Substack at the moment. If Substack continues to become a worse platform, I will probably move it out of there.
Yeah.
I have seen some trends towards that direction. So josebriones.org, dumbphones.org, or Moving Offline newsletter. Those are the easiest ways to find my work. And you can also contact me if you reply to a newsletter. I receive it, and then I'm able to give you some advice or, point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right. Well, our last question, when you give a damn and you care about stuff, it can be incredibly taxing, and every every good fight can feel like an uphill fight. So we always want to end with, in the midst of everything that you're doing, and you can use any category in the world, doesn't have to be specific to digital minimalist life. What's giving you hope right now?
What's giving me hope right now is that people are returning to engaging once again with each other. Let it be politically, let it be in the fight for rights or digital privacy. People are starting to understand that online forums, Reddit, or things like that is never going to make the change that we actually need for
That's right.
for our communities to become better places. So now I can see a return to those roots, the roots that have delivered so many freedoms to the world, which is organizing locally, meeting locally, and making changes locally for a better world. So that's what's giving me hope nowadays.
That's great. Yeah, I do see the cynicism of online activism increasing. People are like, fine, you can post on stuff online, right? But we really got to get to do the work, which is great. Well, thank you so much, Jose. This has been incredible.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
for having
teaching
me.
us. And I hope many people find your work through it.
Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.
Well, that's the end of our show. Really glad to be back. And knowing what's coming, I just can't wait to share with you just the stunning set of guests we have coming up in this season. Make sure you're subscribed on your podcast app of choice. Please, please, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts. I know you get tired of hearing that on your podcast apps, on the podcast you listen to, but it really makes this huge difference, makes it possible to do this. I want to grow this community around Damn's Given this year. And I want to do that while giving over as little of my and your attention to the algorithms as possible. And the reality is, the only way we can do that is to do human stuff together, to get back in the habit of sharing and saying, hey, you should listen to this. Hey, this really helped me. Hey, let's talk about this in community. Next week on the pod, we're going to just double down. I'm joined by the brilliant and sometimes controversial guest, someone who's asking similar questions to the ones we raised this week, Jacob Warwick. What we're going to be discussing is why he deleted his 30,000 person LinkedIn profile, what he learned on the ride up and the ride down of that terrible app. And I'll tell you, I learned some things. So until then, keep your brains on, your hearts open, and keep moving forward. Thanks.